Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being with me today. I have a new friend slash colleague on with me today. I have Natalie Lamb. Natalie, thank you for being with me today.
For having me.
I'm so excited to have you. So you and I met a few weeks ago on, well, we connected through a Facebook group that we're both on, and then we did a little chat. And uh, there's so much that we can bring from what you do and what I do. And so let me tell everyone a little bit about you, and then we'll jump in. So you are a life, relationship, and grief coach, and you do a lot of work with individuals and couples, and you've written some books, and you have all kinds of offers and just services and ways that you really work with people. I love your origin story, so I might have you tell us a little bit about that. But we're going to try to fit in a whole bunch of stuff into this because there's a lot of amazing things that you do that I know people that listen to my podcasts are going to benefit from. So I'm going to hand it over to you. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, the whole rundown, and then we'll jump into our topic.
Okay, so as I never told you, I am a life coach, relationship coach, grief coach. They all kind of intertwined at different times, right? And just watching how life kind of expands gives you just that opportunity to be able to step into so many different, I think, positions in people's lives. So, like as a life coach, you really are looking at the individual. And so you're coming in from the space of how can I help you become right who you want to become. What can we do to create together? Because I love that more than me like helping you, guiding you. It's like, let's create together, right? Let's create this life that you desire, that you want. The vantage point I have is different than yours. So if we look at these things together, then we can create what you need, right? And with the relationship, I mean, I started doing premarital counseling, back in the 90s. And that was really just orchestrated from me watching, my parents had a church, and me watching couples. You're a pastor's kid, so you see a lot of stuff, and you see a lot of couples not working, and you see a lot of chaos and confusion. And so I had went to my mom as after I graduated, and I said, let me create this course for you. So let me create this premarital course and we'll walk them through it. It's like an 8 to 10 week course that, they had to do before they got married. And, some couples are still there, thank God. Um, right. But it's like watching that and really was from me talking to these couples that everything else kind of was birthed. That I saw different aspects of life. And, you can get book knowledge, but when you talk to people, when you're with humans, you see things from a totally different perspective, right? So it was like I really let that guide my whole career of letting each person that sits in front of me teach me something that I didn't know, teach me something about the human experience so that I'm broader, right? That I'm not just in this cookie cutter idea that everyone looks like this or speaks like this or this is their experience, even if the experiences are similar, right? Your perspective, which you take out from it, is so totally uniquely you that we have to play into that in order for everything else to kind of transpire or for us to grow, right? And then just throwing in the grief, my mom passed away in 2002. I'm 26, my daughter's 18 months. I'm in a spiral of not knowing how to do this, what to do. And so, I started researching grief and understanding that it was really from a selfish perspective. Because I said, I have to figure out how to be one, a great mom, because that was everything to me. And so I just, from there, I researched, indigenous people, the ancients, Western, our way of looking at grief is a little jaded, right? We're not as immersed in it, not as accepting in it. We want it to be much quicker. And I realized through this, now it's with 20 something years, and I still can get choked up. I still can go right back to the day. The ache is still there, the hole is still there. And so realizing that this hole is something that stays, right? And learning to build your life around the hole instead of trying to fill the hole. And so with that, then I started doing grief groups and, everything kind of spiraled from there.
Yeah, that was a good spiral. That
It
was
was
the
a
one
good
that grew.
spiral
Yeah,
upward.
spiraled up. I love it. And you touched on so many amazing things that I'm really excited to get into. So, I'm going to have you kind of tell us about your unique program for couples. But before we do that, one of the things, like so many of the things you said, stood out to me. So, the idea of this kind of journey that we take with our clients, that there is no cookie cutter, as therapists, coaches, all those helping professions. I think the helpers that assume they know how to help their client are the ones that do it wrong. Like those of us, thankfully, who come into it with, like, we look at that individual for like as being an individual, that we don't know what you need. I want to, if you come to me, then I want you to tell me your story. I want you to help me understand how you got here, what's happened in your life, because then together we figure out what are your goals and how do I help you. And so I always tell people as a therapist, like, I'm along for this ride with you. I want to do this with you. I'm never going to tell you that I know what's best for you. And you and your experience and walking people through just growing in life as individuals, in their marriages, and through grief, it is such a unique experience. Like, yeah, there are certain things that maybe we can say, some people experience these kinds of things during a breakup or a loss or something. But at the end of the day, it's felt so individually and so uniquely, and no two people experience it the exact same. You could have a twin sibling and both lose a mom and grieve incredibly differently and move forward incredibly differently because your experience is your own. And then the other thing that you said that I love is that instead of filling the hole, how did you word it? We work around the hole, something like that. Like, it's the idea of incorporating grief into our lives rather than just trying to kind of move on and leave it in the dust. But we change. Grief changes us. So I'll give you a minute to give me your thoughts on that, and then we'll jump into the relationship
No,
thing.
absolutely. You realize that you are not the same person before and after. And it is one of the questions that I always pose to my grief group is what part of us coming to the acceptance part, right? And acceptance is really lifelong. It's not just a one-time shot. It's a forever acceptance because every time something new happens, there's a new acceptance, right? The layers look different, the grief feels different, how we mourn is different, right? But it is this, how do we, and you speak of that, of how did I grow my life around the whole? And it was like something like literally an epiphany hit me that there's no way anything could feel her, right? Because she's too big and she was too much for me. And she was so, I mean, just the epitome of, talking about a great mom. She was that, right? She was like pure love. One of the purest people yet still today that I have ever met, right? And that's like looking at her from her mom, so I could talk about her, right? I can be like, oh, you get on my nerves here and there, but the pureness of her was so amazing. So it was like I realized there's no one that could ever, or nothing that could ever feel this. And that I actually started my business after she passed. It was like my nod to her. It was my, let me put on my, grown up pants and say, now I've got to just do this without, this support net underneath me. But it is when we are able to say, and grief is not just the loss of a person. It is all the look, thousands of griefs that we experience from birth on. And because we don't talk about it enough and we don't instruct people that grief is normal, right? And the feelings around it are normal, and that it takes sometimes longer or always longer than what we want it to take, right? That there is no quick thing to get over, that there's always a little bit of dust that's left behind with each loss, but those losses can also make us so much greater, right? They open our hearts in a way that our hearts would never be open before, right? It gives us an empathy that we never would experience, right? It transforms if we allow it. And I think that that's part of the problem when we speak around grief, is that because we don't talk about it enough, we're not educated in it, we don't understand it, we don't embrace it as being a normal part of living. that we now push it under the a corner. And I have to say so many times, give yourself permission. Like just permission to cry, permission to have a sad day, permission to feel it as often as you need to feel it, knowing that it's just a wave. And like when you can embrace that all these emotions are waves that come and then they go, unless you hold on to them, right? And make them stay, or you keep pushing them down, saying, I don't want to feel you. The nature of an emotion is just a wave. It comes, it can sometimes overwhelm you. Sometimes they take us out, right? And
Yeah.
we're like, how am I going to get some air? How do I get, over this? But you notice that, wow, I can do this. And I grow a muscle around feeling. I grow a muscle around pain, right? I grow a muscle around anxiety. And then all of this becomes like, this is what life is. Instead of this idea that life is supposed to be perfect and always understandable, and there's always a rhyme and a reason, and we're going to find the silver lining. Like some things, there's no silver, right? It's just dark, and it
Mhm.
just shouldn't happen. And that's part of life too, but our way of, and I think even in our profession, we have to be careful not to try to give a reason for everything, to
Yeah.
let some things just sit and be, because there's not. And if you're searching always for, oh, this means this, or there's going to be some greater epiphany from this, or you may be searching, and you just miss the naturalness of just being a human and living.
Yeah. Wow. Weird. Yeah, so much to go back to there. I don't know how we're going to get to relationships. No, I'm just kidding. I've actually got a really good segue for us. But before we do that, I love the raw nature of what you're saying, that it really, there's no like step by, if you just do these things it'll absolutely get you where, no, life isn't linear. Like that would be great. There's some things that operate really nicely on a schedule, and I'm a scheduler and a control freak, so I really like that, but life doesn't work that way. And so I think, like you're saying, being able to accept that we don't have control, but that's okay. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to grieve. And I think society has kind of set things up for us like, that's wrong. It's wrong to hurt. It's wrong to not be okay. And there's somehow a weakness in hurting. And that's just not the case. And so what I'm thinking is, I'm going to branch us off. So one thing I'm thinking is that you and I probably we're going to treat this past few minutes as a teaser to when you and I are going to come back and do another episode about grief individually and in terms of a relationship, because not only does grief change you as a person, but it changes the dynamic of whatever relationship you're in. And especially if we're talking about a marriage, when and I did an episode a few weeks or a couple months ago about loss of a child in a relationship. But you and I probably can broaden that so much to what happens when one person, let's say you experience the loss of a parent, and now you have to figure out how to get back to a place of still being a good mom or a good what dad or whatever, and being a good spouse and being a good individual. Like that is a conversation I think that's really good for you and I to have. But I want to segue it into something with relationships. You talked about being able to grieve individually and uniquely. And that's actually the title of your program for your marriage. So you have a program called Uniquely Yours, and your whole theory, and I don't want to butcher this, so I'll kind of give it a little soft intro and then I'll hand it back to you. But it's the idea that you can create the marriage that you want, and comparing your marriage to other marriages is really not a good way to go. Comparing your relationship to other people's is going to set you up for disappointment and failure. And so as we're talking about, you can't grieve according to someone else's schedule or plan. You also can't build your relationship according to someone else's schedule or plan. So tell us about your program, your theory behind it, and just let's build from there.
Okay, so Uniquely Yours was really created out of really the premarital course, right? So I started with that, and then I have just built on it over the decades. And it really is this concept that, couples come to you feeling like they are at the end, right? And they're in so much hurt and pain and despair. And oftentimes I look at them, I'm like, you're just normal. Like, this is actually what marriage looks like. This is what we do. Like, it's not going to always be great and wonderful, and you're going to be on the same page. I mean, who's on the same page? And then it's this, it's this idea that you are so unique and your partner is so unique that you now have lived however many years, right? By yourselves without them. And now you're trying to create a new world where you both exist, but you have to exist together and respectfully and almost equally, right? Like, your perspective gets to be different and his perspective gets to be different. And it doesn't make one worse or one better, it just means it's different. And because we've been sold this idea of fantasy, that we come together, and if someone loves you, then they just automatically know what you think, and they're going to just jump in and give you what you desire. And that's what love is, right? And that's what being in a good marriage. And we never argue, and we never fight, and we never disagree, and there's never periods of time when I'm thinking about, should I stay with you? Like, it's like that is marriage, right? The
Mhm.
ups, the downs, the trials, the victories, the growth. Because if you're married to somebody over a period of time, they will have been married to several of you, right?
Right.
And then I have to reintroduce you to the new me. And I think this part, and that's part of what I do in the course, is you have to study each other. We stop studying. Like, when we're dating, we're kind of watching, we're seeing if if you're a red flag, if you're going to be the one. But then we get married and we stop studying. But now you're experiencing life in a whole new way. You've never experienced it, right? So now I've got to watch who you are under this stress. I have to watch who you are when you have these joys and these victories and these defeats, right? And then these pains and these sorrows and these losses, before I tell you to change, before I tell you you've gotten it wrong, let me study how you do it, right? So I'm sitting here from now, my concept is you go to the balcony, right? You go to the balcony of your relationship, and now you look and you're like, okay, that part has changed, but I didn't change, he changed, right? Or I didn't change as the husband, she changed. Now, how do we connect again with the changes?
Mhm.
Because life keeps bringing stuff, and kids come in. Now we're different. We're not the couple we were before, and we shouldn't be. So sometimes it's like we got to get back to, no getting back. Now you create something new, so you stay in the mode of we are creators, right? And that's what I really believe. I believe that's that element that we got from God, to be creators, right? And like, we get to create always. And that is the greatest power we have, is that no matter what I'm dealing with, no matter even it's turned to rubbish, I have the ability to create. And if we can do it together, and we go in with the mindset that me and you are creating, then everything changes, right?
Mhm.
And then the idea is, in my first tenet of the course, is we are more alike than we are different. Men and women are more alike than we are different. And we have been sold the total opposite of that. We go in trying to find how different we are. And we realize at the base of us, we need safety, right? Which is like the number one in any relationship, is safety. Do I feel safe enough with you? Do I feel safe enough to be me, right? Do I feel safe enough to explore the parts of me that I don't even know? Because there has to be some safety net to fail. And so when we create safety, then we're able to explore love, because love is different, right? Like, your definition of love is not mine, right? And how that is concretely divided and given to us is not the same. And so then we talk about admiration, and we talk about respect, and we talk about what trust is and what honesty is. But I want you to create the definition. Don't give me something that someone's given you, but from your life experience, what are these? And my couple sit there and they're like, how did you see it that way? Right? You're talking to your spouse and you figure, because we've been throwing these words around, right? You're disrespectful, right? And you're like, that was disrespectful. I didn't even know, right?
Mhm.
You don't see that as trust. Like, I broke your trust doing that. I had no idea that that would be a thing that would break your trust. So when we start exploring it from we are more alike than we are different, then we can get on at least in the same book, right? Maybe we're in different chapters, but the same book, and we
Mhm.
can go through our pages together without the pressure of having to change them.
Yeah. Wow. Absolutely. And I love your perspective of, you know, never stop growing, right? Like, and that's what I try to always teach people, like, you should always be curious. You should always want to learn. And I think, as you were saying that, I thought that maybe we use the wrong terms when we help clients understand this, because I think when we say something like you should have date night or you should spend time together, I think some people can't wrap their mind around why that's so important. Oh, okay, well, we're supposed to go out and date. Well, we have kids, we don't have time for that. It's not about the date. It's not even about what you go do. I don't care if you throw a blanket down on the living room in your on the floor in your living room and just sit and talk, like that is a date. It's
Yeah.
spending that time to connect. It's looking for an opportunity to grow. And ideally, we don't go gaps of time without growing. Like we shouldn't aim to have to catch up for these long distances. We should be trying to stay, like, let's walk side by side as often as possible, but life happens, and sometimes kids and work and health or whatever get in the way. And before you know it, you've maybe gone a little bit longer than you typically need to or want to before of sitting down and connecting. And so then, yes, you do have to catch up, but the desire to be close and to know this other person, I want that to be built in. And that's, I think, sometimes we try. I've learned, and I don't know what your experience is, but in my work with couples, sometimes I'm trying to my starting point with them is too high for them, right? I'm trying to help them nurture this relationship and friendship. And I actually need to come way back down here because they don't even like each other anymore, right? Like they don't even have anything to talk about. So if I'm encouraging you to go out and spend time together, but you don't look at that as a positive thing, you see that as a chore. And maybe, like you said, there's no safety, there's no security because there's judgment or there's distance. And so, like you were saying, uniquely yours, your program, the goal is I'm not going to give you this cookie cutter process. I'm going to help you figure out where you are, why you're here, and where do you want to go, because your experience is going to be based on your desires and your personality and your changes. And like I love your example of like that offended you because it's so true. And I think there's so much unintentional selfishness that we have. Like I've talked it, my listeners know this by listening to me. I'm super sensitive and I get my feelings hurt a lot. And I've had to grow. I've been with my husband for almost 21 years. I've had to learn over the years that that was my responsibility.
Mhm.
I needed to teach him what I like and what I don't like about the way he talks to me, but I also needed to toughen up, right? I needed to not take things so personally. I needed to learn how to not hear everything through this filter of ooh, me, and my feelings, right? And so, but that's part of the journey. If we talk and we learn and we grow and we're vulnerable, then we're not just focused on ourselves.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But you know what it is? I say, marriage has three lanes, right? It's your lane as the wife, your lane as the husband, and then the lane of the relationship. And if you don't know what lane you're actually traveling at a certain time, you'll mess it up, right? Because there's a lot of things in marriage that are very individual, like the growth, the maturity, the healing, all of that really is my personal responsibility. Now, my spouse can aid me with it, right? And I can show them how to where my triggers are, where my sensitivities are, why this comes out. But I have to know it first. And sometimes we want our spouses to know more about us than what we know about ourselves. And so I don't even have the ability to be able, I'm like, do you know why you're so upset? Right. And sometimes, no,
Mhm.
I don't know why I'm so upset. I just know I'm upset. Right. But there's something more that I need to do, that I need to sit there with myself and say, why am I reacting like this? Because they've been consistently this way, right? And I keep responding the same way. Why is that? And it's like accepting the fact that there's going to be aspects of your spouse that you're never going to like. Like, there's going to be things about them that's just like, gosh, I wish that could change, but you can't change that because that's you, right? But that's a part of you that I wish was different. Like me and my husband, we've been together actually almost 35 years. And
Wow.
um he's the quiet one and I'm the chatty one, right? He's always the when we got together, we both were really quiet actually. But then me, he's been married to like 12 different women. So now I'm like this. I'm like this chatty person that's talking all the time, but he's still the quiet guy, right? And so all the time we talk and we commute a lot sometimes together. And I can just go, go, go. And he's still just, I'm like, do you hear? And I know he hears me because he can give me back and he can jump in when he wants to. And I'm like, just a simple yes or uh-huh or something would be really nice. But we've been having this conversation for like 30 years, right?
Yeah.
Not
Uh-huh.
changing because that's who you are. So I can be annoyed, right? But I don't have to be upset.
Yeah.
I can be like, gosh, and I say it to him all the time. Gosh, I wish that was different about you. But we laugh it off and it's whatever. But he has the same things with me,
Yeah.
right? And so are things that are different now that used to cause like my feelings are hurt, or I feel rejected, or I feel like you're not paying attention to me, have now become, okay, this is you. And there's some things about me that I'm actually not changing because I actually like that about me. And there's
Yeah.
things, I mean, I like this about me, right? Like, I wish I would shut up sometime, but I'm a talker now. So it's fun.
Yeah.
It's like, this is how I process and all
Hmm.
of this. And he's like, okay, you do that, but don't make me come in on it. Like,
Stay in your lane, Natalie. Like take that with you to your lane.
over there, right? But it's really saying we don't have to look like anybody else. And like, if you can go in with that amount of assurance when you get married, that we don't have to look like anybody else. Our roles don't have to be the same. I don't have to take on the traditional, this is wifey, this is husband, this has to look like we get to look how we look and we get to change it as often as we need to,
Yeah.
right? Like there's times when, of course, when my babies were little, I'm all mommy, I'm all into it, but he was like a super dad, right? And so it was times when he confronted me, and this is funny. He was like, I'm their dad. Like, you're not going to tell me how to do this because I stand equal to you as being their parent, and I'm going to do it this way, and I'm going to be involved, and I'm going to take the babies from you, and I'm going to
Mhm.
nurture them, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to put, like, he was super hands on daddy, right?
Yeah.
Which is amazing and beautiful. And they have something really, really special now that goes everything, like you get a good husband and a good dad,
Yes.
you
Yep.
like have won the jackpot, right? And
Hmm.
so I have that in him, but it's like being okay with the transitioning, being okay with when money is tight and when money is coming in, and when people get sick and when your family is dispersed and you have all of these life challenges. That just means, oh, we have to create again, and we've created so many times throughout the marriage, but it doesn't have to look like the way you created. And yours is good and mine is good, right? Like,
Hmm.
like they get to stand in this equal space of being good, but nothing alike.
Right. And I think that to your point, like there are some obvious reasons that couples struggle, right? Like if there's any kind of abuse, cheating, whatever, right? Those are the basics. But I think that a lot of the times we create struggle, right? Because we want something that either we haven't communicated, like you said, the other person can't read your mind, or to your point, you look at a different relationship or Facebook or something, and you see something that maybe you think you should be doing the same, that somehow that is a measure of a healthy relationship, and because you don't have it, that somehow you don't live up to the standard. But that's so tricky because who's to say that that's right or wrong? What works for you may not work for me. And so then it's about figuring out, well, why do you want it? And why are you unhappy? Is it because of this? Or is it because of this other thing over here? Maybe it is more of an individual um, issue where you're feeling somehow unsettled within yourself. And so you're projecting it onto your relationship, or you have an expectation of your spouse, and that's really not a fair expectation. So now you've caused a problem and you've created a divide that didn't need to be here. And so by talking to someone like you or me, that's where we can kind of lay that groundwork. But we don't want people to need us. We want people to sit and talk to each other and work this out, because ultimately, you know your spouse, or you know yourself. If you don't know your spouse, you need to talk to them. Um, but it's about growing and creating. Like you said, I love that term. Usually refer it as like being creative and nurturing, but I love that you took yours is creating, mine's creative. It's interesting. Cool. It's because we're awesome. It's fine. Um, but I love to me, I feel like I get to take control of that, right? If I can look at my relationship and see my role in it and recognize that I always have the ability to work towards the things that I value, but I would like to work towards them with my husband, then I'm empowered. Like I get to nurture this. I get to create it. Now, if you and your spouse are not on the same page, not even the same chapter or book, we have a problem. We need to really figure out where we need to go from there. But I think more often than not, in my experience, the couples I work with, they're not that far off from each other. They're just looking at the situation differently, and they don't see the similarity, and so they feel very detached. And sometimes they just have to kind of look at it a little differently. But it's about not being afraid to work and not letting Hallmark movies be the foundation for how we want our marriages. Like you can have those moments, that's great, but life is a little different than Hallmark.
Yeah, a lot different.
Hmm.
A lot different. And in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and like like now everybody says relationship goals, and you're looking at somebody strictly from the outside, and you
Yes.
see these acts of love and what we think is connection. We have no idea what's underneath. So it's like, why go for their goal and create your own? Like find your goal that you want, and then work everything you can to get that. I think where couples often miss the mark is that, we have a certain amount of, I think, still, as much as we talk about mental health and counseling and all of that, there's still a certain amount of shame. And there's still a certain amount of taboo that if I have to go see someone, that means that I don't know how to do it. And that makes me weak, or that makes me ignorant, or all those other words that we align up with it. What I've noticed is the couples that, because I do a lot of premarital, that stay with me and they come back every 6 months, every year. Whenever they hit a moment of disconnect, they come back so that they can connect faster. Those are the ones that tend to learn how to do the flow, right? The first, 5, 6 years of marriage can be really tough, like
Yeah.
really tough. We act like it's just that, the honeymoon is the first year. First year can be miserable for people because
Yeah.
it's like you do that, you live like this is how you eat, this is how you wash, like this is how you really, act when you're about to go to bed. Like all of those things are just the mundane things, can be things that you're just like, God, this is not the way I've been living. So
Yeah.
everything apparently has to adjust or change, or we keep walking, not, connected, and
Mhm.
it's like, yeah, it's okay for you to struggle in the beginning. It doesn't mean your marriage is doomed. It means that you
Mhm.
guys are learning your groove, you're learning your rhythm, you're learning what to add in and what to take out, what to tolerate, right? Because there's a certain amount of toleration that
Yeah.
is needed in marriage. You have to
Yep.
tolerate some things. And I
Mhm.
do when I do the premarital, I tell you have to know what you cannot tolerate. Write down the list of things that you just cannot tolerate. Because if you can't tolerate them, no matter how wonderful they are, no matter how much you feel you're connected, those are going to be pitfalls that you always fall in. Be honest with yourself, though. So you can let them know, like, this is something that you really have to change. Because if this doesn't, there's going to be no way we can keep growing and moving and creating. Because now I feel like that's a thing that goes against the essence of me taking care of me. And so, but if I don't have that knowledge, right? If I don't know that information, how do I give that to the person? How do
Right.
I instruct them on those things so they're like, oh, okay, you fussed about six things, but this one thing is the thing, right? Like, let's do a hierarchy. Like, this is really big. These are really small. Even though I fuss about it a lot, we can live with these, but this one, we got
Hmm.
to work here.
Yep, which is why I love that you do premarital because I think in my experience, most of the couples, most, not all, but a really large majority of it, of the couples that I work with in therapy who have been married for a while and are struggling, the issues that they have existed before they got married. And they either didn't address them, didn't know they were big enough, they weren't the deal breakers, or they didn't think like, oh, it'll change, as we get older it'll be fine. No, it's not. You're pissed about the thing that existed in this person before you ever married them. Like, that's not fair. Then you shouldn't have married them. Like, I'm sorry, but this is where we are. So now it's really, you have to work a little harder. It's still possible to repair it and grow, but you have to get over yourselves. You have to stop being so fixated on what you want and try working together on what is best for your relationship. Are you just trying to pursue your own needs, or are you trying to nurture a shared need? The
Mhm.
lanes, right?
Yeah, yeah,
um it's like, I mean, all the examples, right? We talk about lanes, we talk about bank accounts, we talk about all the things. Like, you cannot be all about yourself. And when you were talking about that first year and the difficulty, like, the image that popped in my mind is like, when you get, let's say you've got an NBA team, right? And you've got new players, and individually they are incredible, and that's why they got recruited to this team, or whatever you call it. I don't do sports. They can be the most amazing players, but they still have to learn how to play together, and they still have to get each other's rhythm. And it can be a disaster. You can be an incredible shooter or whatever, but if you cannot pass the ball and figure out how your teammate plays and how to anticipate the pass and all of that, you're useless. It doesn't matter how amazing you are. You cannot work well with this team. And if you are yourself, everyone on that team is going to notice it, and no one's going to want to be on a team with you.
right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it really is giving ourselves, like, who taught us how to be in relationships? There's no course on it. We never really talk about it. It's something that every person experiences in their life, right? But we
Right.
have we have nothing that we dedicate to. This is how you interact with people. This is how you take care of yourself, but you take care of others too, right? Like, we should start teaching that to the babies, right? Like, going up through it, of these are the skills you need. And we talk about emotional intelligence now, which is not talked about hardly enough, right? But
Mhm.
those things are so monumental in living well, right? I have another course called How to Be a Better Human, right? Of just the tenets. How do we just be better humans? Because this rat race that we're in, we're not looking at the main thing. We're looking at everything on the outside, but not the center, right? Not
Yeah.
the constant. And we are the constant. Like, no matter what's happened in your life, no matter how many relationships you've had, good, bad, and different, jobs, friendships, you are the constant. So if we are only looking at everybody else and I never take time to look at me, then I've missed the biggest part of why my life is the way it is.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
not blame,
Right.
right? But it is accessing, why is my life like this? Even if it's, why do I allow these bad people to be a part of it? It's still
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
And I think we have taken away from looking at personal individual responsibility, and we have put it on everyone else. And that is disastrous to marriage.
Yes.
Because in marriage, I have to stop and look at, what part did I play? I tell my couples, I don't care if it's 20% that you own. Go in there with your 20% in your hand and say, this is what I've done. to make this look like this. Because if you can't own your part, then nothing really ever changes.
Mm-mm. No, I love it. And that's a beautiful way to put it because I even like you said, even if all you did was allow it, even if all you did was not choose something different or not say no, whatever, that is still you get to look at that. And you can look at that as, I mean, if you want to self-blame, that's a choice. It's really not the goal. The goal is empowerment. Make a different choice, do something
Yeah,
different, and I think that so much of what and I know you and I both have other things to hop into, so I'm mindful of our time, but um I I think it's about teaching people that when we talk about marriage as work, it's not supposed to be draining, exhausting, like I can't sustain this work. It's effort. I like to look at it as effort. Like anything that's worth doing requires some effort, but the more you invest in something, the more you really give it what it needs, the less effort you have to keep giving it, right? And I think that so many of the people that we work with see struggle or effort as a sign that we are just failing or doomed or this isn't a strong relationship. But then what happens, and I think it's this all or nothing is what a lot of just human nature, I think, is if I can't have this, then I don't even want to start. If I can't work out for an hour, I'm not going to work out. No, just like a 5-minute walk is great. Walk in place in front of your computer is fantastic because the alternative is nothing and no change and no growth. So if you can't have the relationship that you want to have right now, okay, what are you going to do to work towards it? What can you do to invest? Call your spouse, send them a text, and just say, hey, I love you. Hope you're having a good day. It doesn't have to be full blown date night for it to be a special connection of a hug or a kiss or just, hey, how are you? I hope you had a good day. Like, give attention, show appreciation, show that you give a crap. Like, just
right.
invest in the
Just
other person.
yeah. And like, I mean, I love the effort. Effort is the biggest thing. Like we can like literally mend so many wounds with effort of just me knowing that you noticed and that you cared. Not that you fixed it, not that you made it all better, but like you just noticed and you care. We can easily give that. That's not even a lot of work, right? It's just basic care and concern, but we stop giving ourselves permission to give it when I feel like someone has hurt me, harmed me, or not doing what I want. So I withdraw my concern and my care, right? And that's the way that I can hurt you the most, actually.
Yep. It's
And it's
control,
it's
power.
true. Yeah. But see, then that's when we go back to I gotta own I did that. I have to own I saw you, even though we may be arguing, right? And we may be in a tiff, but I saw you come home from work exhausted because your day was heavy. And I could have maybe just offered you a glass of water and say, take a rest. It's not me saying,
Okay, everyone, we had a technical difficulty. Your computer shut down on you, huh? I love technology.
don't
It's
you love
great.
it?
Love it. Okay. So I'm going to merge these together. Tell us, what were you saying? It was brilliant. What was it?
Brilliant.
Ah,
No, I think we ended off, we were talking about the care and the concern and the effort
yes.
and being able to do that and how that's just the basic of giving to any person that you care about, right? And the analogy of, even if we're still tiffing, even if we're still having an issue, we still can show care and concern.
Yep.
And I have to take responsibility when I'm not showing that. When I am harboring this thing that I feel like I give myself permission to be mean and I give myself permission to be cruel when I don't have to. I can still choose kindness. I can still choose concern. I can still be there for you until we get to a resolve of things because everything is not resolved quickly. Especially if we're coming in, let's say you start counseling and you guys have been in a tough spot for a year or two. Well, I mean, we wish we were magic workers, but we're not, and so it takes time to unravel it, to get to the root of it. You talk about the branches in the first couple of sessions because we don't know what the root is until we get to the root. We really cannot even find the resolutions to it. So you got to give anybody that's starting counseling, give us time to
Yeah,
give us time to jump into your world, to learn your world, and to get a perspective that you don't have, so that we can guide you in a way that you have not been traveling. We need a new road now. So it's time that we give us time to pave the road at least before you say
exactly.
this stuff doesn't work.
Yep. And it's kind of goes along with your how to be a good human. I think the foundation of any relationship, and tell me, maybe you see this differently, but I always tell people the foundation is a friendship. Like, I have to like you to want to always try to do for you, right? If I don't like you, or if I feel, and this is where a lot of our couples are when they come to us, is they're in such a place of everything is so personal that there's a lot of one-upping, like you said,
Mhm.
why would I do this for you if I don't, if I feel like I've had a really tough day, you come home and you've had a tough day, but we don't know how to support each other, then I don't give a crap about your tough day. I've had a tough day, right? But the goal is, if I'm constantly trying, and I'm not going to be perfect because I'm human, but if I'm constantly trying to pour into you and you're trying to pour into me, then when we have a hard day, well, maybe I've had a hard day, but I can give a cup of water and 5 minutes for you to take a break so that you can come back a little bit more refreshed. But people have to be less selfish to be in
Yeah.
a relationship, to be a parent, to be a good friend, to be a spouse. Like, we cannot be so fixated on what we want all the time, because if we are in a relationship with someone, then we are both pouring into each other, and then everyone's needs get met. And yes, sometimes you ask for something that you're not getting, or you try to teach each other how to do it better, but the goal is always focus on the other person, because they're going to be focused on you in a healthy relationship.
Yeah, yeah. And I do think, I mean, I think we don't talk about the selfish aspect enough. Um, I actually have my couples go through and point out how selfish you are, because you need to know where your selfish little niche is, right? Because we all have it.
Yeah.
And if I'm not aware of, like, I'm really operating in this real selfish mode right now, then I'm never going to get to a we, right? Because it stays an I. And
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not willing, like, to say, well, you have to give for me to give. Well, there's always going to be times when someone has to do it first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, hopefully you're taking turns and you're able to do that, on and off for each other. But to just wait until the other person, then you are guaranteed to never get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it is in that I'm like, why do I think that I should just be catered to?
Yep.
Why do I think that this should be just
Yeah.
surrounding me
Yep.
and the other one doesn't matter? When, and then also recognizing the effort that is given. It may not be to the extent you want it, but can you recognize that something was handed to you, that there
Mm-hmm.
was some type of hand given, some type of gesture, somewhere I stepped out of myself to help you, at least notice it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times you hear that with couples, like, well, I tried and then you didn't even see it.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm not
Yep.
going to try anymore. It's like we can acknowledge it and notice along the way so that we can keep improving.
Right. Do you know the image that just popped in my mind? So, when our son is 11, but I think back to, like, when he was an infant and would wake up in the middle of the night, like, there was no part of my brain that was excited to wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning. But it's you're wired, like, this child needs me. Without me, he will not eat, he will not be nurtured. So when you get up, like, you pull yourself out and you go and you pick up that kid out of the crib and you feed him or her, what you're doing is you are nourishing, nurturing, and literally pouring life into this child. It's inconvenient all the time, but it's filled with love, and the immediate what's the word? Reward is happy, calm, satisfied, satiated baby that then can move on. And then we do this over and over and over. And before you know it, this kid can, take care of himself a little bit more, grow to be more nurtured. And so like the image that popped in my head was the emotional counterpoint to that, right?
Yeah.
When you, as my partner, my spouse, my child, whatever, when you need something and I emotionally can give that to you, even if I'm exhausted and I don't want to, but I put just a little bit of what I have into it, the reward is immediate. And again, this is a mutual thing in a relationship. I'm not going to give if there's absolutely no return, because then it's not a great relationship. But if I'm in a relationship with someone, we're both committed to give, knowing that sometimes I might give a little bit more, you give a little bit more, because it's quantity or quality, not quantity, and that in the chores and stuff like that. But we both invest and give 100%. Then the reward is there. So I don't know. That just went through my mind.
No, absolutely. But it's like we can give ourselves permission to do that for our kids, right? But when it comes to our spouse, sometimes it's like,
Mhm,
no, I'm not going to be that caring to you.
mhm.
I'm not going to be that nurturing to you. I'm not going to go the extra mile for you. But I want so much from them. And it's like there has to be some giving, right? That is continuous. It cannot cut off. It cannot be like, well, if you don't do what I want, then I'm no longer giving. It has to be this on both ends, right? But I think they look different at different times. Like we have different capacity at different times, which goes back to where I was talking about of the studying each other. Because you have to know what season your relationship is in. The seasons are always changing. So if my season is a season where I am really depleted for whatever reason, I need my spouse to give to me more. And I don't have as much to give. But wouldn't it be wonderful if I'm like, babe, I just realized I'm in this really depleted season and I don't have that much to give to you, but I still need you to give to me. I promise when I'm full, I'm gonna come back to you and you
Yeah.
don't even have to give to me as much. Like we don't have those types of dialogue,
It's great
right?
though.
And
So
like
that's
I
what we're teaching
remember that,
people.
yeah, like I remember that when after my mom passed, I was like, I don't have anything really to give.
Mm,
I'm barely holding on,
yeah.
right? I got this baby that I have to pour into because I
Yep.
promised her this. But everything else, nah, I don't know how much I have to offer you right now. But if you stick with me, we're gonna get to the other side of it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, we
Yep.
don't have that. Like jobs happen, and life circumstances happen, and friendships die, and we're in these, and our parents, get sick, or our sisters or brothers, or we fall out of space with them. Like we all only have so much capacity,
Right.
and like, do you
Yep.
know your own capacity first?
Right.
And then I can teach you capacity where my levels are as our lives evolve.
Yep.
Yeah, just
Beautiful.
different language.
Yep. So we're gonna wrap up, but I wrote a couple things down that we're gonna just put it out there so that you and I will be accountable. So
Okay.
um I oh gosh, I want you to come back and do like 17 episodes with me. So the one that when we started out, we're talking about grief. One, I do want to do an episode on that, but here's what I'm thinking also is you made the point that grief is not just about, death and losing people to death. And I think what you and I have both seen in a lot of couples is that change, whether it's a loss of health or a change in health, a change in ability, a change in a job, a loss of a job, whatever, all of those things can result in a form of grief. And we don't give it that title. We don't label it that because it's just supposed to be something we just roll it off,
Right.
whatever, move on. But if we can give it the attention it needs, even if just for a little bit, we are a lot more well adjusted afterwards. And so I think it's interesting to see how many couples go through a struggle because there's an unaddressed grieving process that needs to happen. that can be because of a death or just some other kind of change. So I would like that to be our next topic, and just how to support, how couples can learn to support each other through change that leads to a grieving process, right? But then I love I love that the how to do an episode about being selfish in a relationship. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot there, because you're right. Like, we as people, and maybe this is not fair to say, but I feel like human nature, we're selfish. We're just selfish by
Absolutely.
nature. So it's hard to imagine merging your life with this other person and somehow managing to always approach life with grace and not selfishness, but we all have to practice and try to do it.
Right.
But it might just normalize that, because we all do that. Maybe it's just about having a conversation about, what do we do when we don't want to, or we don't feel like we're getting enough? How do we have that dialogue? How do we have that conversation? So we're going to have another a couple episodes, Natalie.
Right. That
I
sounds
love it.
great.
All right, girl, I'm going to let you go. But before we do, okay, tell us, how do people find you and get more information about your book and your program and just all the things?
So my book, you can go to natalielamb.me, and all the book information is there. It also has a connection to my school, where you have the Uniquely Yours course, which is for the marriage course, and also How to Be a Better Human is on that as well, which is also iyconline.com. But you can get it through the natalielamb.me. And then the books are the Wisdom Chronicles. It's going to be a 6-book series plus a journal. And so 2 have been published. The first one is
Great.
Open Your Eyes, which is really just the starting of us really garnering wisdom and putting into tangible ways to change our life. And then the second one is called What I Want You to Know, which is really geared towards really kind of the 20s, 30s, 40s, right? We're going to extend it, of just life lessons that we need to take in. Really easy read, right? But really profound in the way of, it's a different perspective of looking at things. So I hope you guys pick those up as well.
Yes, and I'll link to all of those websites and everything as well in the show notes. But thank you so much for doing this episode with
Right?
me. I really enjoyed talking to you, and then to be continued for the next one.
Yes.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
All
Bye.
right. Thank you.